Hello, everyone, and welcome to the End of the Chat Gaming Podcast. I am your host, Kneeckoh, with my co-host, Rico, over here.
Hola.
And we get together every week to talk all things video games. What happened this week? What did we get? We had up on the channel this week, Final Fantasy VII Intergrade DLC gameplay went up. Scarlet Nexus first impressions went up. Rico did both of those. I checked out the xCloud streaming on PC. And I also, before this podcast, uploaded a video talking about Psychonauts 2 and why you should be excited for that. So all that is available over on the Enter the Chat YouTube channel. And we are also available on most podcast services as of now. I was checking it today. We're available on Spotify, Google Play, and a couple other more lesser known ones. Still not on Apple. That one's a pain. I guess that one has a longer verification process. So hopefully that'll be up soon on Apple. But we're available everywhere else and on YouTube if you like the video format. So how's the week been going, Rico? I haven't actually talked to you. How's the week going?
Oh, it's been going. I've been pouring basically most of my time into Scarlet Nexus. Really, the whole story and setting of that game has me hooked.
Yeah, you were texting me about that.
Just
You're
now
still
getting
loving it, huh?
half. Yeah, I'm right now. I'm about, I'd say, at a halfway point, because with the games, there's two separate playthroughs you can go through. So I'm almost done with one, and then I'm gonna be hopping right into the other one.
Gotcha. So you've only been playing Scarlet Nexus, not a whole lot else?
No, Scarlet, it's basically one of those things where it's once I really get into a game, I won't really dive into much else until I at least finish that game I'm very focused on.
Gotcha.
And the thing that sucks is that after I beat Scarlet Nexus, I have another game that's probably gonna take just as long to beat Nier Replicant, because I don't know if you know about the Nier games. That one's another one that takes multiple playthroughs to get the full story.
Yeah, I myself have been playing games with multiple playthroughs lately. But before I get into that, topic of the week that we will be discussing here, we're going to talk about gaming and how it's changed throughout our lifetimes. Now, we're younger guys, so it's not as significant, some of the older generations, but we figured this was an interesting conversation, especially considering this particular transition into a new generation with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. But I first wanted to talk about the games that we've been playing this week, and we kind of hopped right into that with Scarlet Nexus. But
pretty much.
What the hell have I been playing? I was playing Ratchet and Clank, which, God Almighty, what a game that is! What a freaking beautiful game! I got the platinum, and I played probably halfway through a New Game Plus to wrap up the platinum.
Yeah, I gotta get back into that too, because I want to get all the Omega guns.
Yeah, I got the platinum, and I'll probably not touch it for a while. I'll probably go work on some of my other backlog. But literally right before we started the podcast, I wrapped up my first playthrough of Spider-Man Miles Morales, and oh my God.
What? I was gonna say, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
What a game. So yeah, okay, I was really worried when they announced Miles Morales. Obviously I was excited because I loved Spider-Man 2018 and I wanted more of that, but I was worried that it was just going to be the same game with a new coat of paint on it. The moves and the style wasn't going to be any different. It was going to be the exact same Spider-Man.
It's so much more.
Oh, it is. It's so much more. Now, granted, you don't have the huge rogue gallery like you got in Spider-Man 2018, but I really liked how they set it up as a origin story for Miles, and you really get to see him become Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's kind of it reminds me of the infamous Second Son, sort of not necessarily DC, but it own game of First Light. It's it gives you an origin story of a new character or one that you're going to see.
Yeah, and I really liked it because, like I said, I was worried it was going to be the exact same as Spider-Man 2018, but there's so many differences in the way that Miles fights versus how Peter fights. Plus, you get the additions of the camouflage and the Venom powers and all that kind of stuff. And it is I love the Venom fun. The Venom powers are awesome. It's going to be weird going back to Peter without the Venom powers.
Well, that depends on how like the actual second Spider-Man game goes. Because I have a feeling that's gonna be something where like maybe you're gonna swap between both Peter and
I
Miles.
have a feeling, especially given the symbiote aspect of it all, I could see Miles having to fight Peter in the symbiote suit at some point. That would be freaking awesome.
That would be. Whew. I was gonna say I can't remember the last game that would have. If that happens, I wouldn't be able to think of the last game that would have like such a emotional battle like that. Well, I guess you could sort of compare like 2018 Spider-Man, you facing off against Doc Ock to
That,
something like
yeah,
that.
and I was surprised how they were able to kind of recapture that at the end of the game with the Tinkerer. That was
Dude, it
super
was
good.
like, ooh,
Like I actually, it
jeez.
brought tears to my eyes the ending of this game.
I know it's like, damn.
And I'm going back through. I'm gonna do the new game plus because I got it to get the platinum. So I'm gonna be going back through it and getting the platinum. But
Gotta get the platinum.
I gotta get the platinum. But I've still got some other objectives. Like I still got it pulled up. What's on my map still? Let's see. We've got the underground hideouts. I gotta finish up. I gotta finish up some of the like stealth and combat challenges and do all the side missions first. And then
Yeah,
I'll go back and I'll speed run the new game plus mode. And I was messing with the photo mode. Holy shit! Some of the photos you can take with this thing. Oh man,
dude, like PlayStation's like photo mode in some of its recent games has been on a whole new level.
Oh, I mean, I was in love. I just saw this. I was just sitting. I was doing it in the middle of a mission, but I was like crouched up on this balcony, and I was like, "This looks really cool." I know I'm supposed to be fighting these guys, but I'm gonna take a second to hop into photo mode. But yeah, I've been playing that. What else have I played? I finished up Doom 2016. I don't know if I talked about that last week, but I played that. Finished up.
I think
that
you
game.
were. I think you said you were in the middle of it last week.
Yeah, I wrapped that up. I played a Space Jam, a new Legacy game on Xbox Game Pass, and that game I'll have a review up for it later this week on the channel. But God,
LeBron James.
you think it would be a basketball game, being that Space Jam is about basketball?
Nope.
Not even a little bit. I mean, like there is a basketball in the game, but
it's like just the balls there, but that's it.
so minor, the use of the basketball, that it's like oh man. And you can only play as 3 characters. You can only play as LeBron, you can only play as Bugs, and you can only play as Lola. Like those are your 3 characters you pick from.
What the fuck?
And then the rest of the Looney Tunes you activate, and they have like power-ups and stuff, which is it's so weird. But yeah, I have a review coming up for that later this week, so I won't talk about that too much. And then aside from that, I've just been playing, more Fortnite and the usual crap like that.
Right.
But yeah, for me, Ratchet and Clank was amazing. I loved Ratchet and Clank. And then Spider-Man, I knew I was going to like Spider-Man more than Ratchet. Like, I love Ratchet and Clank.
Well, yeah.
But Spider-Man is just my jam, and I am so looking forward to the sequel to Spider-Man 2018 now.
Right, and I can't fault you for that. Both are great games, but like you said, Spider-Man's like your all-time favorite superhero, so of course you're gonna like that more than Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, it's just, it hit a spot. But we'll get back to our topic. We're gonna talk about what gaming has become over the generations in our lifetime. So quickly, we'll recap where we started gaming. If you'd like to lead off there.
So where I started gaming, you could pretty much say gaming really started for me right around the very first PlayStation. That was essentially my first like major console. I may have had like a Game Boy handheld too around that time, but the PlayStation, like I said, was that first major console. Played like a bunch of like weird games on there, as well as some of the more iconic ones. Like I did play Crash on there a bit, and then there were some weird ones like a NASCAR racing game, but it wasn't NASCAR. Basically, take NASCAR and combine it with Mario Kart, and then some other like few weirds. Nothing like too crazy, really.
And for me, it was I had a Game Boy, but it was back in that time period where my memory's still a little like foggy. But I shared a Game Boy with my brother. I remember we had like a couple of games, like we had Mario on it, and then we had like a Tonka game that we played on it. And then the first console we had was a GameCube, and I remember getting Super Smash Bros. Melee, and then Godzilla Destroy All Monsters was our first game on it, and that's kind of where we started. And I mean, I feel like GameCube was around the same time. When was the release date of the GameCube? As the PlayStation 2 era. GameCube release date 2001. PlayStation 2 was, I was gonna, yeah, in 2000. So yeah, they were right around the same time in terms of
Yeah.
the games that were coming out on them. And that's what I was gonna say, because I remember going to your house and playing a bunch of stuff like Tie and everything that I already had on my GameCube. Back when
Oh
Nintendo
yeah.
still really liked third party.
Yeah. Back when Nintendo like wasn't really the heavy hitter that it is today now. Like don't get me wrong, there were still some like big great games in there. I mean Smash Bros. Melee and all that stuff. But it wasn't what it is today, basically.
But yeah, back then it definitely was more of a single player thing. And if there was multiplayer, it felt like more of like a party game kind of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say like back then, of course, like that was before online play was a thing. So really, the only multiplayer stuff was just inviting a friend over and having a second controller handy, and was typically came down to either like some racing games or like you said, party style games. Because I'm pretty sure there was a Mario Party on the GameCube, and then
Yep,
Smash,
Mario Party
Mario Kart.
4. I think Mario Party 5 might have been on GameCube as well. But yeah, it was
Yeah, you might be right.
a lot of those couch co-op, kind of deals. But I do, if I'm not mistaken, PC gaming was definitely the only way you got multiplayer at the time, unless you were together in the same room.
Yeah, pretty much. Like even then, it was like still very like I'm not too sure how prominent PC gaming was back then or what was available at the time.
Yeah,
Because was WoW even out around
WoW
that
was
time?
2004, so it was a couple years later.
Okay, so not not exactly at the same time, but not too
But
long
that was
after that.
probably EverQuest time, EverQuest 2 maybe. I don't remember the exact timeline of when EverQuest came out. But yeah, it was because my dad was big into EverQuest and he was playing that all the time. And then World of Warcraft came out and that's when he got into that. So yeah, PC was really the big multiplayer scene up until we move over into the PS3 and 360 era. And that, in my opinion, was the last significant jump in terms of consoles until now.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely the bigger jump because that was around the time where they video game companies started really looking at online play, and not just online play, but that's also around the time where video games started getting more because from like for me from like PlayStation to PS2 era, you bought the game and then that was it. Like you
Yeah,
had
until
all
a
the
sequel
content in
came
the game.
out.
Yeah, until a sequel came out, basically. But then came the PS3 and 360 era, and it was around that time. I don't think it was at the start. I think it was like sort of like in the middle of that era, maybe a bit close towards the end, where DLCs started to become a thing. Where now there's this additional content available for, a bit more money.
Yeah, and that was with the introduction of like the PlayStation Store and the I don't remember if it was called anything different back in the day, but what is now the Microsoft Store for Xbox. But
Yeah, I think it was just Xbox Store or something like
and
that.
that's when I feel like that's when the console war got really bad, is when the
Ye-
introduction of those two stores came to be, because then they made deals with like Call of Duty. I remember back in the day playing on PlayStation, Call of Duty DLCs always came out like a month earlier on Xbox.
Right.
And there was this huge
That
back and forth during that time, especially because like there was definitely a huge difference in the online experience when you play it on an Xbox 360 versus on a PlayStation 3.
Yeah, the console war definitely started with that era because like PlayStation had a bit of a messy launch and headling with the PS3, and that just allowed Xbox 360 come in and gain a lot of ground, and that's I think when the console wars pretty much started. So PS3 360 era was what you could consider the birth of the true console wars.
The birth of, yeah, the current console wars. Not, I mean, the Nintendo Sega console wars were long before our time.
True, but and I don't really know if I consider that much of a console war because that was more between companies. But now, like with the PS3 360 era to now you have actual fans involved in it, and companies like Sony and Microsoft, they don't really seem to care as much. Yeah, they'll take jabs at each other, but they're not as like at each other's throats about it or as adamant about it.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially because at that time that was when Halo was at its peak. Like Halo 3, Halo Reach, those were the ones I remember everybody that was on Xbox talking about.
Yeah, that was around time where like Xbox had like some really like heavy hitting exclusive titles. And it wasn't until want to say like maybe a bit later in the PS3's life cycle where Sony started to sort of double down on their exclusives, because that was when we got The Last of Us.
Yeah, it's that was when you really got to see kind of the divergence between the two, where Xbox focused on a huge variety of exclusives. Like you had Fable, you had Gears, you had, everything like that, Halo. And then on the other side, you saw that kind of change from Sony being, the traditional kind of goofy exclusives that like what they
Yeah,
had with like Kingdom Hearts, and that Medieval was another one, where they kind of started moving to what we have now with the Sony PlayStation Studios, where it's like the third person action, story driven narratives that they give us these days. You
where
kind of
like
saw that
every
transition toward the end of the life cycle on the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, where it's like now a lot of their exclusives are almost like a dramatic and emotional filled cinematic experience. Basically, it's almost like you're playing through a movie or like a really good TV series.
Yeah, and that's like because that's when the first couple of Uncharted came out, right? They weren't on PlayStation 2. Was the first one on PlayStation 2?
I don't that let's
I
see
don't
that.
recall. I'm not huge on the Uncharted series, but that's when like we got Infamous for the first time. That's when Killzone was getting really big. Resistance was big at the time.
Let's see. The first Uncharted came out in 2007, which I think was
Was that
no, it was
launch?
only roughly. Yeah, yeah, no, there was no Uncharted game on the PS2. That's
Okay, that's
all
what I thought.
PS3.
It was PS2. That's where our Infamous came in. That's where Uncharted came in. God of War was big then. That God of War was on PlayStation 2, but God of War 3 was the big PlayStation 3 one. And
Oh
then
yeah,
we
God of
had
War
God of
3 is
War
just
Ascension
over.
as well. And then toward the end, we started seeing stuff like The Last of Us come into play and things of that nature as we started moving into the PlayStation 4. Then we got, Spider-Man and everything that came later as we transitioned. But that's where you really got to see them kind of start telling these huge stories, like you said, like a movie.
Yeah, like I'm like right now I have like a list of some of like the best PlayStation 3 exclusive games, and it's such a nostalgic thing looking back. Like, yeah, you got of course Last of Us at the top, you got Metal Gear Solid 4, the Little Big Planet series, which was
Mm-hmm.
like a pretty endearing series, and
Yeah,
I kind of like how they brought it back with Sackboy, but at the same time, I really hope they bring us like a
a traditional
traditional
Little Big Planet. Yeah.
Little Big Planet game. And let's see, you got original Demon Souls, and now you have the remake slash remaster that launched with PS5.
Mm-hmm.
The the fucking infamous games, Killzone, like just honestly looking back, like yeah, Xbox had like a pretty strong hold on like the exclusives, but then you look back at what Sony had at the time, and they had some real good ones at the
They had
time.
some
Like when you
bangers.
really
See, that was the difference between, in my opinion, between the two consoles at that generation point was Sony was really telling these huge stories with those exclusives, where Microsoft was really doubling down on the online stuff.
yeah, and then like once they saw like like the online stuff really start to take off, and now you got PlayStation coming in on it with God, I can't even think of what. Probably like more well, now it's kind of like reverse, because you said before Xbox used to get like maps ahead of time, but now Sony's cut a deal with that franchise to where they get maybe some maps ahead of time, or they get some exclusive content now.
Yeah. And that was definitely the difference in my opinion. Microsoft was super focused on multiplayer. That's what they cared about. And that's when we started seeing a lot of the free to play stuff start springing up. Where not necessarily like the free games you got from like PlayStation Plus or Xbox Gold or whatever it was, but the actual like free to download, throw money at it later kind of games. Like the one that I remember playing a lot on PlayStation 3 was DC Universe Online.
Oh god, DC Universe. Now, I remember like downloading that, and it took so long to
Yeah.
download. I'm just like, why is this taking forever? I just want to make my DC superhero persona.
And that's when I remember them really start to bring in a lot of the free to play stuff as we started moving over into the next generation and moving over to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And for that specifically, that was a very minor console jump, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
it
remember the
it
biggest thing with the PlayStation 4 was just the controller getting the touchpad, and that turned out to be just more of a gimmick than anything.
yeah, and that and there wasn't so much a jump like graphically, mainly because like some of the first games you could play on it was just like upgrades from the PS3, which one of them still going today. Fucking GTA 5. Don't forget that came out on PS3, and we're
Oh,
getting a
you're right. You're
PS5
right. That
upgrade
did come
soon.
out on PS3 and it's coming to PS5. Yeah.
But
Wow,
then,
that did
but
come out forever ago, didn't it?
yeah, I know. Like that just dawned on me. I was like, shit, that was PS3 era, and here we are, like how many years later, still playing it.
Wow. But yeah, and then
It's like weird how like so many games have like stood the test of time and are still getting like brought onto future platforms because of like the influence they had.
oh yeah. And that's that generation, like I said, it was kind of a smaller jump. And then Xbox, that's when PlayStation started to swing back a little bit. Cuz I remember in PlayStation 3, remember the great PSN outage where you couldn't even freaking play online because
Oh
for
yeah,
like months because all of a sudden somebody hacked PlayStation Network.
yeah, hacked PlayStation Network, got a bunch of like people's information got leaked and all that stuff. It was a big deal back then. And I that dealt like a serious blow to PlayStation
And
at the
they
time.
fell behind at that point. But then Xbox with the Xbox One had a pretty rocky start that generation because they were like, we aren't going to do physical. It's all going to be digital. We are focusing on a bunch of other medias and not just the games. And then PlayStation was like, nope, games. We have physical stuff. I remember the E3 stuff, and everybody's like, cheering and making fun of Xbox the whole time. And then, it came out and they really swung back. The PlayStation 4 was a phenomenal system that everybody liked. And that's when
Oh yeah.
PlayStation really brought back their online service where they added stupid stuff that should have been there to begin with, like the party chat features and things like that for your friends list.
Yeah, like PS4 era was definitely like where like Sony like planted their feet and figured out like what they want to do finally, and finally like kind of actually like start listening to people, giving them like stuff we've wanted for a long time, and really just double down as like, okay, here's our game plan, here's what we're gonna do, here is what PlayStation is going to be.
And that's, yeah, they really did double down. And that was when you started getting things like, God of War 2018, Spider-Man 2018, where they continued that, action adventure narratives that you're getting left and right. And then we got things like The Last of Us 2 toward the end, and they really doubled down on the fact that that was what they wanted out of their exclusive games. I mean, they didn't have many multiplayer exclusive games that I can think of off the top of my head.
No, not really, unless you count like maybe like some of their unless you count stuff like what's their racing game, GT or Turismo.
Yep,
That
yep,
might be that might be one of like the few I can think of.
yeah.
And then yeah, that's pretty much it, cuz like Sony's not really like too known for like its crazy multiplayer experiences. At least not yet. They
Yeah.
might be like putting some time and investment into some new IPs. Like I don't think this is gonna be a PlayStation exclusive, but I know the makers behind Control are working on a multiplayer
Yeah. I
IP
did see
that's
that.
tied to that universe.
Yeah. But then on top of that, again, back to the free to play stuff, this is where you started seeing, a bunch of the free to play games that were already on PC start kind of migrating over. Where, we got things like Warframe, Smite, a lot of other MMOs like Elder Scrolls Online launched on console. That's when consoles started getting beefy enough to actually run some of these PC level games.
Yeah,
And
I remember like at the time, like at some point, like people were just like waiting for what was like the big free to play experience at the time, PUBG, waiting for that to come to consoles.
yeah,
And when it finally did, people were just like, "Oh yes, fucking finally!"
yeah. And then we had, what are some other ones that came? Well, Fortnite, obviously. That's when things really
Yeah,
started to change. When the free to play games started getting as good as they are and as of quality that they are, that's when things really started to get shaken up a bit because everybody was so used to the $60 price tag. That was just like that's what it cost to get into games, and occasionally you got a good free one on like PlayStation Plus or Xbox Gold.
right. And now, obviously, like with those kind of games that came, not so, well, not like all those games, but some of them, and then also some other paid games with brought about the birth of loot boxes and
Yeah, yeah,
microtransactions, which was that. I mean, that wasn't so much like an exclusive thing between Xbox or PlayStation. That was more of just like a developer type of deal. I don't even remember who was like the first one to do it, but yeah, that was. I'm glad we kind of got out of that era. Obviously, there's games like still today that have loot boxes, but you don't hear about them as much.
I'm thinking I want to say the first like game that I remember playing that had loot boxes that you had to buy still was Overwatch.
Yeah, it might have
That's the one
been.
that comes to mind immediately.
Yeah, at least on the console side. Of course, on PC, yeah, it's stuff like CS:GO
Yeah,
and stuff
CS:GO and
like
all
that.
that. But yeah, that free to play games were definitely where it opened a lot of developers' eyes to the fact that they could monetize the hell out of their games and people will pay. Like when I think about free to play games, I've spent more money on, League of Legends and Fortnite than I think of any other game I've ever played in my life.
No, definitely, because like you see, like all the you want to get like these cool new skins or stuff that will appeal to you, and then you see it's like, oh, I'll just get like like an $8 bundle pack for like a few loot crates and stuff. But then you realize you keep doing that over and over and over and over, and it just builds up so much after time.
Oh yeah, like this week alone in my Fortnite, I've bought Thanos, I bought Blade, I bought Black Widow, I reactivated my Fortnite crew membership because Loki's in there. Like the amount of money I just throw at that game because they keep giving me stuff I want is absurd, and that's when it got really bad for a minute with everybody thinking that oh we're gonna make you pay $60, but we're still gonna throw microtransactions in. Like you had Star Wars Battlefront 2 being the real
Oh
big one.
god.
Yeah, I
Ugh.
remember that was a huge debacle at the time, which the game has definitely been brought back since,
That
but
was
it was
so bad.
super pay to win at launch. And then I remember even single player experiences like Shadow of War had microtransactions.
Yeah, like the Shadow of War one, like is what baffled me the most. Like, you really gonna lock like this stuff, like really gonna lock stuff like a new orcs and everything behind like a paywall? Like, why not just put this in the game and have us like try and earn it ourselves?
I mean, you could definitely go through and unlock this a lot of the stuff that the microtransactions would get you, but it would
Right.
speed up your process. Well, it'd speed up the whole game process a lot more. It'd be a lot less grindy if you just spent the money.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was like, yeah, you can grind this for free, but it's gonna take so damn long. And that was like one of the major problems with Battlefield Front, Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
I couldn't talk for a second. I was having a stroke. But yeah, that was like one of the major problems. Like, yeah, you could get like these loot crates and stuff for loot crates, loot boxes for free, but it just took so much grinding. I think like someone like broke it down one time and just like to get enough to get one loot box took like 40 hours of just grinding the game out.
Yeah, and I definitely nowadays we've kind of strayed away from that because Fortnite, I think we have to thank for it. They came up with a
Yeah, like
battle pass system, and that is such a better system than just buying endless crap outright versus buying and knowing exactly what you're going to get, and then the more you play, the more you're going to be able to unlock.
yeah, I was gonna say Fortnite definitely set the like precedent of like if you're gonna do microtransactions, don't make it anything like where someone feels like you have to absolutely get this thing in order to do better in the game. No, just keep it to like cosmetic stuff and like fun, like silly things like that. Because like all you buy in Fortnite is just skins, different harvesting tools, emotes is probably like one of the things I like buying most because I like getting all like the different dances and stuff just because I like hearing the music.
Exactly. Yeah. And then every other game copied the battle pass system quickly after that. Like it's in Call of Duty, it's in Rocket League, it's in Rainbow Six Siege, it's in freaking
It's gonna
every
be in
game.
Far Cry 6. It's
It's
gonna be
gonna
in
be in
Halo
yeah, it's
Infinite.
gonna be in Halo. It's gonna be in every freaking game on the planet now.
Yeah,
And
which like I'm perfectly fine with that.
yes, I like the battle pass system so much more because it gives me a reason to play outside of just the game. Like I love the challenge hunting in Fortnite and doing that kind of stuff. Now, I will say in all of the games, I think Fortnite, I don't mind the one in Rocket League. Rocket League's is okay with me because it's just as you play, you unlock more crap. Fortnite, I like
Right.
because it gives you that extra objective, and then they get really good crossover stuff. That's what really gets me in the battle passes. Like, right now we got Rick in the battle pass, and that's exciting. Whereas stuff like Call of Duty,
Fucking Rick
where
Sanchez.
you get things like Call of Duty where the battle pass is there, but it's not like they don't put as much cool stuff. Like they just recently had Rambo. Rambo was an item shop exclusive. It wasn't in the battle pass. Versus if it was in the battle pass, I would have bought it and I would have played the battle pass so much more religiously.
Right. And I guess like one thing we should point out is like with these battle passes, you don't even really have to buy them. There is a free version you can get. Now obviously you won't get all the rewards as many rewards or all of them as you would with the paid battle
Yeah.
pass, but you'll still at least get some stuff, so you can still have at least something to work towards. Like with the Call of Duty one thing I did like sort of like about their battle pass is that they would include new guns every season in the battle pass, but they'd be free ones that you could earn.
Yeah. And then now we've got battle passes even in games that are pay, that you buy, but the battle passes aren't like an extra cost. Like the one that comes to mind is Sea of Thieves. Now you can upgrade your Sea of Thieves battle pass to have like,
Right.
extra goodies, but the extra goodies are more like extra like currency for the in-game shop, where everything else, all the cosmetic stuff is all unlockable without buying the battle pass. It's just part of that new season. And then another one that comes to mind is Knockout City had a battle pass, and that was a $20
Oh yeah.
game, and that was completely free. You didn't have to put any money to get the battle pass. You just had it.
Yeah, I know. Definitely seems like we're in that era where like microtransactions aren't really as prominent as they used to be. Like I would say like more towards beginning, middle lifespan of like the PS4, Xbox One era. But now we're at that sort of like nice middle ground where like there is stuff you can buy, but you don't feel as pressured to actually buy it.
Yeah, and I definitely like that. And then back on the topic of Fortnite, because Fortnite just is a Goliath that, kind of set a lot of shit in motion. Crossplay. PS4
Yeah,
and Xbox
yeah,
One was the dawn of crossplay.
yeah. I know. It's so wild to think how like with the PS4, Xbox One areas, like imagine like going back to the PS3 360 era or like even like back to like PS2 original Xbox era and saying like, hey, what if I told you you could play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on your PlayStation 3 and play with a friend who's playing on Xbox 360? You wouldn't believe it, would you?
No, no, everybody's mind would blow. And that's what we said back in the day. Like, it would be so awesome if we could all just play together because we're playing the same goddamn game. And then
Yeah,
Fortnite came around.
and Fortnite came around and actually introduced crossplay as like, hey, guess what? No matter what platform you're playing on, you're gonna be able to play with any of your friends. If you're playing on Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, even PC, you're all gonna be able to play together. Heck, even mobile.
And now I love that it's becoming a norm. I love that most games, now Sony is still fighting. I remember Sony was the big fighter when Fortnite was starting to introduce those
I was
features.
gonna say, Sony, add crossplay support for Borderlands 3. I need friends to grind these guns with.
But like I remember at that time, it was like Sony was the big one that was like, "Hey, we're not letting anybody play crossplay with Fortnite." I mean, it was a huge deal, and then finally they let it through. And then the big one that I remember being the first one that was day one crossplay on everything was Modern Warfare.
God, Modern Warfare was it. It honestly might be up there as like my favorite like Call of Duty game of all time. Modern Warfare is just so good.
It was awesome, and then the fact that Call of Duty was just coming out and being like, "Yep, everybody can play together no matter where you're at, what console you're on." That was huge. A game as big as Call of Duty doing that.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Call of Duty being basically like the biggest multiplayer experience of its time still today, really. Maybe you could sort of argue that with how big Fortnite's got, but still Call of Duty finally introducing crossplay was like holy shit, so we can get crossplay in basically like any kind of multiplayer game
Oh yeah.
now.
And then also cross progression. Fortnite again being the one that really set that precedent where no matter what system you booted it up on, all your shit was still there.
Yeah, we're still sort of like in. I feel like it's in that phase where it's like it's not as prominent yet in a bunch of games,
Yes.
but as you know, as we get further along in this generation, and maybe like some of these games get next gen upgrades or maybe sequels, then we'll start seeing that a bit more.
Yeah, I think the further we get into this generation, the more common that's going to be because even Call of Duty does it these days where I can boot up Call of Duty on any of my consoles and I have the same Warzone profile.
Plus, I'd also like to say, like, I like how with Sony's approach, I'm not too familiar about Xbox approach on like integrating people into like their new generations. Because like when they went from not PC, PS3 to PS4, you had like a pretty like decent handful of games that you could upgrade to PS3 or PS4, so you didn't have to like actually get rid of those PS3 games, and they were like good games too, like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I remember,
Yeah.
and then of course GTA 5. I can't remember what else there might have been. I
Battlefield
think maybe
4 I
a
remember being one.
Battlefield 4 was one. Yeah. I feel like a Far Cry game was one of them. Maybe
Mo-
not because
Might have been Far Cry 4. I don't remember when it released. That was the first
maybe.
one on PlayStation 4. I remember though. So if it was a Far Cry game, it was that one.
And then this one, I mean, like we're almost a year into the start of since next gen started, and we still have games that are gonna getting like PS5 upgrades, and then you still have games also like on Xbox Series X and PS5 that you can still play even though they're base PS4 version.
Yeah.
And then what else? That and like a bunch of even new games yet to come out are still going to be playable on previous generation
Yeah, like God
consoles.
of War for Horizon Forbidden West, those kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, those two big ones, which like some people might be salty about, but it's like, dude, right now we're in a time where like PS5s and Series X's aren't,
Yeah.
still prominently available. So like, even if you're stuck with your like last gen console, you'll still be getting like these new games.
And that's what's huge. And then before we move on, because we're starting to kind of migrate into the current generation, we
Yeah.
have the good old. Well, first off, Switch. Switch obviously dropped, and that
Oh
was
yeah,
huge. That shook up everything because
I
the
was gonna
like I
say.
remember. I remember back in the day playing Skyrim on my PS3, and I was like, "Wow, it'd be freaking awesome if we could take this game anywhere." Switch came out and was like, "Hey, bitch, now you can," and I was like, "Whoa!"
I was gonna say we've been talking about like the how far games have come on just like PlayStation and Xbox. We haven't even mentioned how far like Nintendo's come on their consoles,
Yeah,
going from you had like the SNES and everything. Then for a while they become like almost, to me at least, they became almost like exclusively a handheld gaming type business, which was fine. There were some great games on like both the Game Boy, DS, 3DS,
oh, the
and
3DS
then
has
they
such an incredible library.
I know it does. And the fact that you were still able to play like normal DS games on it also helped a lot.
Yeah,
And then
the Wii
we
was
get back,
awesome.
the Wii was phenomenal. Like
And then we had
it
that
only
we had that dry spell with the Wii U.
yeah, what do you mean though? You mean that dry spell where they didn't really have anything going on? They kind of just supported the Wii for a while, added some sort of weird gamepad to it addition. I don't know how that worked out.
Yeah, and then we got. I will say, as much fun as everybody makes fun of the Wii U, we wouldn't have the Switch without it. That was
Yeah,
kind of like their little transition.
yeah, you can almost say like the Wii U was almost like the prototype to the Switch.
Yeah.
Like they had an idea, but that wasn't the proper execution of it.
Yes. And then we get to where we are now, and it's been notorious over the years for Nintendo to not be super third party friendly, but now have them get games like Skyrim, like Doom Eternal, like Witcher 3, all these huge games coming to Nintendo consoles finally.
And it's not even just like they're casually adding to them. Like whenever they do a direct, they do like full on showing like, hey, here's some games actually coming to Switch. With like with the recent E3, we saw like not so little games that are gonna be coming to Switch, if not already on them. I haven't been keeping up too much with that.
Yeah, and then there's like even yeah, like you were saying, we saw a bunch of stuff at E3. Like I was super shocked to see Guardians of the Galaxy was making its way to Switch.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. Not just for the fact that it's like, how is this graphic going to run on a Switch? Because admittedly, like as great as the Switch is, definitely not like the
Oh,
most
it's not the
powerful
powerhouse,
console.
yeah.
Yeah, not a powerhouse, but that's because like it's not like made to be a powerhouse. It's made to run Nintendo games, which aren't exactly like graphically crazy games, but that's just because of the style Nintendo does its games.
Mhm.
Unless you have a Capcom working on it with their RE engine, which how the hell does Monster Hunter Rise look that good on a Switch?
That is also, yeah. And so we got the Switch, and that was awesome. That really shook a lot of stuff up. And then the big thing that wasn't really big until more, last year, definitely this year. The same year the Switch launched, so did Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, like Game Pass was definitely like one of the big things come out. People didn't really think too much of it at first, but now Game Pass has become like this what you could almost consider like the best deal in gaming, really. Now, PlayStation does have PlayStation Now, which I have looked into it. It's not like as bad as it is. It's just that Sony doesn't really market it that well,
And it's
and the
not,
fact that it's all game streaming as
yeah.
opposed to actually downloading the games.
And you don't get the games day and date. That's, I feel, the biggest thing, which we didn't back in the day on Game Pass. But I remember, I feel the biggest thing at the time was just like like God of War just recently. I feel like last year, maybe in 2019, it finally made its way to PlayStation Now, where you're making people wait a whole year or two, depending on the game, to play it on the streaming service instead of just, putting it out right away and boosting those streaming service numbers.
Right, and like, don't get me wrong, like they do have like they are still adding like great games on there and not so little games. Like just recently, I think it was announced. I don't know if they're on there yet, but two big games that getting added to PS Now are Red Dead Redemption 2 and
Yep.
Neo 2.
Hmm.
So it's like PlayStation Now can be as good as Xbox Game Pass. I just feel like they kind of need to somewhat start over and rebrand it.
Yeah, I would say they should probably go for a rebrand. But that I remember being
Yeah,
a
because
PlayStation guy at the time and not really caring for Xbox, and then being like, there's no way Game Pass ever works. There's no way that this ever becomes a successful thing. And now being somebody who the first console they got this new generation was an Xbox, looking at Game Pass, looking at the offerings available, I'm like, holy shit, was I wrong?
yeah, like I was gonna say, Game Pass has definitely become that. If you have an Xbox, or even if you're playing on a PC, or who knows whatever other fucking platform that Microsoft introduced Game Pass to,
Android and iOS.
Game Android, iOS, eventually your own fucking Samsung TV,
Hmm.
like a Game Pass is gonna be a necessity at some point.
Yeah.
Especially if you're someone who maybe has like a tight budget to where you can't afford, like, especially this current gen now, like $60 to $70 games.
Yeah. And then again, moving into this generation, we got the $70 game thing. That was the first price jump in what, since the PlayStation 2. I want to say the PlayStation 2 they were $40 and then they jumped to 60, and then we moved into this generation and games are now costing $70 on the next gen stuff. I think that is actually only
Yeah,
on the PlayStation side, if I'm not mistaken, though. Because Xbox, you can just buy the Xbox One version for $60 and your Xbox Smart delivers that to the next gen version.
yeah, I was gonna say I haven't seen too much of like price jump for Xbox games, but again, that's because they got like Game Pass now. And who knows? That might be the thing where like a bunch of their exclusives are gonna just be on Game Pass or available on Game Pass, or in who knows what if they'll do anything with like the actual base price come like with some of their bigger games like Halo Infinite. I can't imagine. I don't think that's dropping on Game Pass, at least not for a while.
Oh, it's on Game Pass day and date.
And never mind, I'll shut my fucking mouth.
Halo Infinite is dropping day and date on Game Pass.
Then that just furthers my point. Is like Xbox might not even need to care about like raising the price point if all their like major exclusives are just gonna drop day one on Game Pass.
Yep. I think even like with the new Forza, you're getting it. I think we're allowed to play on Game Pass if you're a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber. I think we get the game like 3 or 4 days early.
Yeah, because like it's just so weird thinking like how much like games have sort of not just increased like quality and how much like there is to actually play with some of how big these games are, but then there's also like the price. Now it just brings about the question: is the uh, price raise warranted with some of these new games and
See,
these new
I
generation?
I definitely think it is when you look at the fact that this is a much larger console jump. Like ray tracing is now in consoles. The way graphics look is phenomenal on these new consoles. What the internals are in these consoles is dramatically different than what was in the previous generation. And the fact that it's just getting more damn expensive to make games because you have to make them look as good as they are. So I think the price is warranted. When they said that $70 was going to be, the new regular, I really didn't care that much. I figured it would have been higher.
But plus, you also gotta think like how over the years, how big video games have just become like within the world in general. Like you go
Yes.
from like PlayStation, GameCube era, to where like games weren't really that prominent. It was just more like an at-home like fun thing to have. Keep the kids distracted while you go cheat on your wife, all that stuff. And to now where it's like it's these things that transcend just the gaming world, to where you see them on like major news sites all over social media. Video games are getting like movie adaptations and TV series and all that stuff. Like we're gonna get like a TV series based on The Last of Us. It's mind-blowing to see how far video games in general have come.
I definitely think last year and the pandemic had a lot to do with that too, with people just having nothing to do and a lot of extra disposable income. So what are you gonna do if you can't leave your house? You're gonna play video games.
That and how much like how big the video game economy really is, because like video games in general generate like billions and billions of dollars in revenue and all that stuff. You see it advertised all over the place. You probably go on Times Square right now and see several advertisements for upcoming video games, or
Yeah,
like the get PS5 now, get Series X now, sign up for Game Pass. It's everywhere.
yeah. And that, speaking on the issue of the pandemic, that made this particular console generation jump a really awkward one. Where, like we talked about earlier, people still can't get their damn PlayStations. They still can't get an Xbox.
Right, and it's not so much now because of the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely made like the actual launch, a bit messy because they didn't exactly ship them out to stores, have them on the shelves ready available because they didn't want like huge crowds gathering in stores to grab these next gen consoles. So pretty much for the longest time, still now really, it's you can only really get them online whenever they do a drop of them.
Yep.
But now another reason why some of these consoles are so hard to come by is because of a chip shortage, which is used in like a whole lot of stuff other than just the consoles.
Yeah, like
Like it's
trucks
pretty
right now. Trucks are really hard to get because of the chip shortage.
trucks, cars in general. Is like I think my uncle talked about how he's bought a Corvette and he's not going to get it till probably like November.
Yeah, and it's made this jump especially odd because of just the unavailability of it all, not being able to get your hands on the console, but then also the scalpers and everybody online fighting over who should actually be able to buy consoles, all that crap. It's been a real awkward transition. Like, I managed to snag out of luck my Series S when the new generation rolled around. Out of luck, I rolled into GameStop and somebody canceled their pre-order and I managed to get it. But that is not the case for everybody. You're not going to always get lucky like that. And like just 2 weeks ago, I got my PlayStation finally. So it's like it's just like a weird awkward phase for the first year of this new generation.
Right, and it's also weird because, like, despite like how hard it's been to come by like PS5s and Xbox Series X's, both of them have been selling like really, really well. Because like right now, I have pulled up at least for the PS5 as of the end of March, they have already sold 7.8 million PS5s,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it like at this point it's already like outsold within its first year the PS2, or at least it's getting close to it.
Yeah, it's
And like it's so weird because like we said, they're so hard to come by, yet it's still doing these numbers. Now I'm sure you can partially blame that to scalpers nabbing up a bunch of consoles all at once, but that's still crazy. It's like
yeah, it's very odd. But then on top of all that, you got the upgrade where we talked about earlier, the jump from PS3 to PS4 and the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One. There was that cost to upgrade, but it was across the board. And we've been talking about this a lot over the week with the announcement of the Ghost of Tsushima director's cut. Like,
yeah, and
people
how
are
controversial
upset.
that's been.
Yeah, people are upset that you have to pay for this. And I could see both sides of the argument. This is another thing that's changed over the years, is that these games are getting upgrades and we can upgrade them to the new consoles, but whether or not they're getting charged is a totally separate matter.
Right, and like some people, like of course, were like some people were upset, like how certain features are going to be locked behind that upgrade with director's cuts, like but it's like some of the stuff that you can't even get like on a PS4 version of the game, like haptic feedback support. You need the dual sense to get that support, so like what does it matter?
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, I said I could see both sides of the argument. Where I definitely think like the Ghost of Tsushima situation, where it's like $30 if you have the PlayStation 4 version already. I think that's justifiable. You get the director's cut, you get the upgraded graphics, and you get the expansion.
Right now,
For 30 bucks,
part of
I
me loves
feel like that's fair.
yeah, same. Cause I just see it as like it's like it's basically like $30 for additional content and features, which is like the general price for most DLC. Now I don't want to get too much into it. I forgot to mention, I don't know if you saw like the calendar update. I am gonna try and do a video on some of the recent like basically PlayStation controversy, not just with Ghost of Tsushima, but I guess some of the controversy with PlayStation's relation with indie developers
Okay. The
because that's been a thing of lately.
but again, like I said, I can see both sides. So I saw the side where I definitely, for me, I don't see a problem paying $30 for that. But then you get
Yeah,
other
same.
games like, the Xbox automatically upgrades you to whatever the best version of that freaking game is at the time. So if you're playing like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you finally get your next gen console and you boot up Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you don't have to pay a damn thing. You just automatically get that version, the Xbox Series XS version. Whenever a new version comes out, you automatically get that upgrade. Versus, on the PlayStation side, you do have to spend that money to get the upgrade for certain titles. And even other games on PlayStation are free upgrades. Like if you look at like Avengers and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that like it's gonna because so far this is the first like upgrade that people actually have to pay for, which is probably why people are up in arms about it because every other upgrade has been free. But this is the first like PlayStation exclusive upgrade,
I think the only other
which
one that comes to mind is Spider-Man.
yeah, Spider-Man. But that one was sort of like a weird one to me. I didn't like fully understand that one because it wasn't just like simple like if you have the base game you can upgrade it. I think right.
I think you had to have gotten the legendary edition of what, or Miles Morales or whatever.
Yeah, that was it. Basically, it was an upgrade like only available through a special edition of basically another game,
Yeah.
which that was the part that seemed like odd to me. But what was it gonna be? Now it's basically gonna be interesting to see like how is PlayStation gonna handle like their future like PS4 to PS5 upgrades because we did get that Death Stranding director's cut announcement. I forget what it was on. I can't even remember. So now there's wonder if like is that going to be another like paid upgrade type of deal?
Yeah.
Because I guess with PlayStation these director's cuts are going to be basically PlayStation's new like greatest hits things where it's like you know how like with the older games I think like PS3 and like even some PS4 games
Yeah.
you'd have like these greatest hits versions of some of like their best exclusives.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting looking forward, especially when you consider the fact that they have announced that the new Gran Turismo um is going to be on PlayStation 4. God of War Ragnarok is going to be on PlayStation 4. Horizon Forbidden West is going to be on. So what happens when those players get their PlayStation 5? Are they going to be able to get that free upgrade, or are they going to be stuck on the PlayStation 4 version?
That and I'm also wondering, like, in terms of pricing, because like, what would be the point in getting like the $70 version of a game that you could just pay $60 for? I'm wondering if it's going to be a case kind of like with Resident Evil 8, where it's both available on PS4 and PS5, but it's $60 for either version.
Yeah. I think if they want to give the free upgrade, just slap the $70 price tag on both versions.
Yeah,
I
like
feel like that's
either
the
yeah,
simplest solution and it keeps people from being upset.
yeah, or like even like just keep it like do they keep it $60? Because then, like, you have people who are going to be up in arms, like paying $70 for a PS4 game. So, really, it feels like the only right answer would be like $60 no matter what version and free upgrade. That's going to be the answer that people are going to want. It's going to keep people the happiest. Now it's just going to be up to Sony's like, is that the answer they're going to
See,
go
I
for?
think if you're gonna up the price, I think Sony needs to stick to their guns on that. I think they need to stick to their guns and charge 70 because at this point it is getting stupid expensive to make games. That's just the way it is. Everything gets more expensive over time. It's called inflation. It's just how it works. The more advanced technology gets, the more shit's gonna cost. I mean, for Christ's sake, you spend more on a damn iPhone than you do on a next generation console. So I mean, like, and people are fine with that, but $10 for a little more of a video game, I don't understand. So for me, it's just like stick to your guns, accept the fact that this is just how it is, and you're gonna have to pick and choose, like you always have, what your $60 or now $70 is going to at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, video games are no longer like these, like small little, like goofy arcade games or not. They're becoming like full on like monster projects that take years to put
Millions of
together. Like,
dollars.
yeah, like let me bring something up real quick. Yeah. because I think so far this game is still like has like the biggest budgets that any game has ever had. So let's see. No, not that.
Well, like I pulled up this one right here. It took 6 years to make it, crew of 1,000 different people, and a budget in around $1 million for The Last of Us Part Two.
Right, and then
Well,
like
100
then you
million. Excuse me. Did I just say a million? I don't
I was
remember what I said.
you said a million. I was like, what?
100
They
million
made that off
dollars.
a million? Yeah, 100 million to make it Last of Us 2, and that is not even to. I don't think that's even to this day the most a game has cost to make. Because I have GTA 5 pulled up right now. Development cost 137 million dollars.
Yep.
Marketing 128 million.
Yep.
Total cost 268.5 million for one game.
Yep.
One game that came out in like how many years ago? PS3 era.
Yeah.
And it's still like the biggest budget that a game has
And
ever
that's a
had.
game that has the longevity with, GTA Online to recoup that money. They have definitely made more than what they spent on GTA 5 in the 12 years since it's been out versus something like The Last of Us 2 being a game that is single player, you're going to buy it once and have it. That is not going to recoup money like something like GTA is going to. So they need that extra money in just to make up what they spent to make the damn game in the first place.
Yeah, like, and then like the money it's made back is insane. Like last year alone, GTA 5 generated almost $1 billion in revenue for Take Two and Rockstar Games.
Yeah.
Like that is maddening. Like, yeah, these games are getting, more expensive to make, but then the sheer amount of money that these games are starting to bring in now as compared to who knows how much they are bringing in and like older console generations like PS1 era and stuff like that. It's like games are not, just these simple things anymore.
Yeah, and again, GTA Online is a very, very special case where that game has stood the test of time. Versus again, games like The Last of Us that are single player experiences, you're going to have to recoup that money somehow, and that $10 price increase is the way they're doing it without making it outlandish or monetizing the game out the ass.
Yeah, I was gonna say with games like those, you're not so much looking at how much revenue they bring in, but you're gonna be looking at how many copies
Yeah,
they sell, and they move a lot of copies.
yeah. So yeah, it's just an interesting point where we're at now. I'm curious to see how the rest of it goes because there's still so many unknowns with like PlayStation 4 still getting so many games and like the last generation still getting a lot of content their way. I'm curious to see how we'll progress moving into and how long this generation will be. My theory is that this generation will last a little longer because of the craziness with the short supply of the new consoles.
The short supply, and it definitely seems like both companies are like they want this generation to last because I think we talked about this on the last podcast. How do games evolve from where they're at now? Because current like this new gen of games have looked insane, and if you look compared to like PlayStation, original Xbox, look how far like not just how big games have gone, but just like graphically
Yeah.
alone, like games have gotten insane to where they're so like photorealistic. Like with Forza Horizon, that what was it, Forza Horizon 5 or
Yeah.
6 that was shown at E3?
5, yeah.
Like you could pass that off as it being in real life, but no, it's a fucking video game. A video game that you control, but it looks like you're driving in the real world.
Yeah, it is very interesting where the rest of this generation is going to go. But that's, I think, pretty much all I had. You got anything to close this out?
Let's see here. No, that's pretty much it. It's just more so like I'm curious on like how far this current generation is gonna go, and like once this generation gets to its endpoint, how does it evolve? How do video games evolve from that point on? And that it's just wild to look back and see like from where games have started to like where we are now. We've gone from like polygonal like
Yeah.
characters, jumping on heads to getting massive multiplayer games like Halo, like Fortnite, Halo Infinite, and like cinematic, almost movie-like experiences with exclusives like Last of Us 2, God of War, Spider-Man 2018. It's maddening to think of how far games have come
Yeah,
over
it's
the
wild to
years.
think of where we started playing and how where we're at now.
Yeah, like it's definitely crazy to wrap your head around, but it's welcome nonetheless. Like I'm excited to see like where games are gonna go from here because this feels like the peak, but I know like both Sony and Xbox, they're gonna elevate it somehow. I don't know how, but they will.
And not just those two. I mean, I'm curious what happens with the new Switch. Whenever that
Yeah,
finally rolls around, I'm very curious to see what happens with the Switch Pro.
we keep focusing on like both PlayStation and Xbox when it comes to this, and just like sadly leaving out
Well,
Nintendo
that's
because
because
really,
Nintendo is this anomaly, okay? They just kind of do their own thing, and they're wildly successful for that.
that it's like how much has Nintendo like in terms of like their games mainly, like how much has it really changed over the years? They've still sort of like kept their same style really, where it's like you don't have like these insanely graphical games or like any games with like a super insane story. They just have like fun games to play
Yeah.
really.
And they do their own thing, and like I said, they're an anomaly because they sell so many goddamn Switch units, and they continue to be this powerhouse. But then again, you get a conversation like this, and everybody's like, they don't think about Switch because everybody in the way I think about it is that everybody has their main console, the meat and potatoes, and then you've got, your Switch on the side for, the couple exclusives you're going to play there, but not something you're going to constantly be on running games with your friends. That's kind of how I feel Nintendo is, and they're okay with that.
Right, you got like either PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, as you said, like your meat and potatoes, and then you got your Switch, which is like your like your mashed potatoes, or who knows, maybe like they're your rolls that you get at Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah, it's like just a little side bit where you just go to, get the unique experiences you really can't get anywhere else because that's just how Nintendo rolls. And then when you're going to play, the big games, you're going back to, your steak and your potatoes, your Xbox and your PlayStations.
I'm just gonna call my PlayStation that for now. I was like, all right, time to fire up the old steak and potatoes. But then it's like with PlayStation, like obviously Nintendo has their own way of doing games. Like their games are the best way I could describe it is like their games are fun. Like no matter what Nintendo game you hop into, you can hop into really any of them and just have like a fun old time.
Yeah.
Where meanwhile with PlayStation games, you can hop in, you can still have fun, but you can also be emotionally traumatized. And I
Yeah,
love
you'll have
that.
your heartstrings pulled and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. Ellie, I hope you get back with your loved one and find your baby.
But that is pretty much all we have for this one. If you want to keep up with us, Rico always says just follow the podcast, follow us on our social medias and everything for that. Follow the YouTube channel. For me, you can check me out over at Kneeckoh_gaming over on Twitter and Instagram, and over on my main channel, Kneeckoh Gaming on YouTube. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got. It's been fun. We'll see you next week.
Peace out.
Peace.